Hello, welcome back. It's the new year, and I read quite a lot of books in December. Also, you might notice the new mic. My previous mic was having a bit of problems, so now we're using this mic. Hopefully this doesn't have the same problems that my previous one did. In this video, I'll be ranking all the books that I read in December of 2025, and then talk about a few books that I'm currently reading, and then look back on 2025 and what I read then, and then look forward into 2026 and what I plan to read this year. But I ended up reading a lot in December. I don't know what it was. It might have been that I had just gotten off of, for Christmas break. I read so much over Christmas break. I read over 20 books this month, which I think is a record for me. And I don't know what got into me, but I lost a lot of sleep, but it was all worth it. So anyway, first book that I read this month, and my favorite, is the Bible. Now, technically I didn't read it this month, I just finished it this month. Throughout the year of 2025, our entire family, read through the Bible 3 chapters at a time, and so we finished it in about a year. And it's not sufficient to give this a rating, because this book is above any ratings or rankings that anyone could ever give it. I recommend the Bible to everyone. Everyone on planet Earth needs to read the Bible. Also, the Baby Shark video on YouTube has 16 billion views, and the Bible has only sold like 5 billion copies. So there are more people watching Baby Shark than there are people reading the Bible. That's a sad thing to see. But even if you're not a religious person at all, or have no interest in religion, you should still read the Bible, because it's so good. Everything about it, every single word is fantastic. And it's all true. From a non-religious perspective, the poetry is beautiful, and there's so much wisdom in it that you can apply to your life, even if you're not a Christian. So yeah, that's all I have to say about this. The greatest book ever written. And it's far above any ratings or rankings that anyone could ever give it. And then the next one is The War of the Jewels by J.R.R. Tolkien. 11th volume in the History of Middle-earth, so this is the second to last book in the History of Middle-earth series, and this one was really good. There's this one section that I found to be really fascinating. It was called, The Travelings of Hurin, or what was it called? Not The Travelings. The Wanderings of Hurin, that's what it was called. There's this one section called The Wanderings of Hurin, which is basically Tolkien's unfinished story of all that went on with Hurin's life after Morgoth freed him from Angband. So this is at the end of the Children of Hurin, right after Children of Hurin. And it's so fascinating because Hurin interacts with all these other men, and these writings aren't canon, of course. They aren't part of the Silmarillion or the Children of Hurin or any of those other books. This is just an abandoned story that Tolkien wrote about Hurin right after he was released from Morgoth's captivity, and I really enjoyed that chapter. And then near the end, the last 50 pages or so was just a whole bunch of stuff on the Elvish, Dwarvish languages, and it was really interesting. I did skim over some of it because it is very tedious to read through the list of all these Elvish words and the Elvish runes, but it also dives a little bit into the history of the Elvish language and how it evolved over the 3 ages of Middle-earth, so really fascinating. This book, brilliant, absolutely brilliant, just like every one of Tolkien's books. 10 out of 10. Not a single Tolkien book has disappointed me, and I doubt any Tolkien book ever will. Although, I still have 15 or 16 more Tolkien books to read, so who knows. They could disappoint me, but I don't think it's likely. Next on this list is A Christmas Carol and Other Holiday Treasures. Now, I didn't read all of this. I only read 3 stories, which is A Christmas Carol, The Chimes, and The Cricket on the Hearth. And I'll try to do this review quickly because this video is going to get a bit long. I already did a review of The Christmas Carol along with another book, so you can watch that if you're interested in hearing my full thoughts on A Christmas Carol. To put it simply, it was brilliant, fantastic, amazing. I think Charles Dickens did an excellent job with all of the stories in here. My most favorite undoubtedly was A Christmas Carol, and my second favorite was probably The Cricket on the Hearth. Charles Dickens did a great job writing all the characters in that story, and I liked all the conflicts that the characters went through and how everything got resolved. It was a very good story, but not as good as The Christmas Carol. My least favorite one was The Chimes, which it was still a very good story, just I found it to be a bit confusing. But the ending was mind-blowing, and it almost left me breathless when I finished it, so it's still very good. Everything in this book is good, by Charles Dickens, and I really love it. And then the next one, I also reviewed this book along with A Christmas Carol, so again, watch that video if you're interested in hearing more detailed thoughts on it. Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien. I've already talked a lot about the concept of this book, the synopsis, in the video where I reviewed it. To put it simply, a great book. It's whimsical, it's fun, and I really enjoyed it. I read it, I got up at like 5 o'clock and then I read it until about 6:30, and I read it in that time, and that was a very fun hour and a half of my life. Very good book. The next one is a reread, and it is The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis. I want to start rereading the Narnia series after reading the Narnia Code by Michael Ward. We just talked about this theory of all these hidden themes behind Narnia. Like, there's the obvious themes of Aslan being Jesus and how he sacrifices himself and resurrects. But there is a lot of underlying themes to it. And reading the Narnia Code, I was fascinated by it. I really highly recommend you read it. I actually have it right up there. But I want to reread the Chronicles of Narnia to see if I can pick up on any of those hidden themes. So I reread The Magician's Nephew first. A great book. I think this is one of my favorite Narnia books. It sets everything up very, very nicely, and I love the origin story for the White Witch and how Aslan created Narnia and all of that. So, a very good story and excellently written, as with anything by C.S. Lewis. And then, I finally read a series that I've been wanting to read for so long and that I've been recommended a lot. I read the Percy Jackson series, just the 5 books in Percy Jackson series. I only read the first 4 books this month, but they were very good books. And I want to do a review of the Percy Jackson series. That video might be for next week. But my favorite of the Percy Jackson books undoubtedly is The Battle of the Labyrinth by Rick Riordan. This is the 4th Percy Jackson book, and I found this one to be the best out of all 5. I think the plot was the best, and the plot twists were amazing. They completely came out of nowhere. I loved all the characters and the conflicts that they went through. I was like hooked throughout this entire book. I couldn't stop reading it. It's so amazing, so incredible. I don't know why I haven't read Percy Jackson sooner. 10 out of 10. My next favorite Percy Jackson book is actually the first one. It is called The Lightning Thief. This book does a really, really excellent job of setting things up. It introduces you to the characters in a very good way, and I thoroughly enjoyed the story throughout. The first 2 books in Percy Jackson are pretty simple, but like when you get to book 3, things start to get darker and more serious, and the series becomes like a save the world situation, whereas in the first 2 books, it's just 3 kids having an adventure. And I really love this book. I think it set everything up very nicely, and I'll say more in my review of the series when I make it. My next favorite was the second book, The Sea of Monsters. I read this book in a single Sunday afternoon because it was so good. The Percy Jackson series does such a good job of keeping you hooked. The characters went through a lot in this book, and there were a lot of plot twists and reveals in it. It starts off with a strong hook, and that hook manages to keep you hooked all the way to the end. A fantastic book. I loved all the conflicts between all the characters. And the one thing I will say with this book, I will never look at sheep the same way again, or guinea pigs. If you've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. My least favorite, I would say, of the series is the third book, The Titan's Curse. Now, I know this is actually a lot of people's favorite book, but we were introduced to a lot of new characters that I didn't really like. I found them to be rather annoying characters, and I couldn't really see their purpose in the story up until the end. The end of this book was incredible, and there were a lot of great moments throughout it too, but I feel like it definitely wasn't as well done as a lot of the other books in the series. It didn't have as strong of a hook, but it had an incredible ending, and so it's still a great book. Sorry there, I just got interrupted, but my next book, after all these Percy Jackson ones, I didn't get to read the 5th and final Percy Jackson book this month, So that's the end of my Percy Jackson ranking. And then next, I reread The Green Ember by S.D. Smith. This definitely isn't the best Green Ember book, but it's a great opening to the series. And this is the book that first introduced me to the Green Ember series, and I've come to love this series so much over the years. I actually met the author once, and he signed all my Green Ember books. But yeah, this is a great book. I enjoyed my reread of it. The thing with a lot of my favorite books, like The Green Ember, Narnia, Lord of the Rings, and all of those, is no matter how many times I read them, I still enjoy them and love them just as much as that first time. Some people will read a book for the first time and they'll really like it, but then when they reread it, they find a lot of problems with it. That happens very rarely with me. So, yeah, great reread. And I also reread the two little Green Ember Archer books, The Last Archer and The First Fowler. I think The Last Archer is better than The First Fowler. The First Fowler, takes place, the majority of the story takes place just over a single day, and I think The Last Archer is one of the strongest Green Ember books. I remember, my only complaint is, I wish it were a bit longer because it felt like S.D. Smith kind of squeezed a lot into like a really short book. It's only about 100 pages. And I feel like he could have lengthened it a little bit, but still, a fantastic book, absolutely brilliant. And same with The First Fowler. I do think Last Archer is better than The First Fowler, though. And then I read all 4 books in the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson, and my favorite one was probably Book 3, Cytonic. So yeah, I read the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson for the first time this month, and I actually enjoyed them a lot better than I thought I would. Because I've read a lot of Sanderson books where I don't really like them, and there have been other Sanderson books that I have really loved. But most of them I feel kind of fine with, and some of them I don't really like at all. But I have to say, the Skyward series was actually way better than I expected it to be. This book was undoubtedly the strongest. It was a very exciting story. It had a fantastic opening and a fantastic ending. One thing that I've noticed with Sanderson books is that he writes really great openings and really great endings, but everything in the middle isn't as great, just in my opinion from what I've read of Sanderson. But I have to say, this book was really, really good all the way through, even in the middle, where I feel like with a lot of his books, Brandon Sanderson doesn't have the greatest pacing towards the middle of them, but this book didn't have any of those problems at all, so I really enjoyed it. And I'll give it 8 out of 10. Or, no, 7.5 out of 10. Hey, quick interjection here. So I just realized, only now as I'm editing the video, that I forgot to give you, a synopsis of the Skyward series, so I figured I might as well just do that now. So the Skyward series takes place hundreds of years in the future when humans have moved across several different planets, and there's this one planet called Detritus. It's a very small planet, and all the humans are trapped there by the aliens from this other planet who think that humans are dangerous and need to be contained in a cage, the cage being Detritus the planet. And our main character is a girl named Spensa, and these aliens killed her father, so she wants to get revenge on these aliens from killing her father, and that's basically what the story is about. But now back to the video. My next favorite was the first book, which is just simply called Skyward. Now, I give this one 7.5 out of 10 as well. This one was a great story. Remember, I read it thinking I wouldn't really enjoy it, it might be a fine book, and I was surprised by how great it is. My one complaint with the book is that Brandon Sanderson wrote this book for teens and high schoolers, but the way the characters talk and the way the story is written makes it feel much more like a book for ages, I don't know, 8 to 12, let's say, and Sanderson was writing for an age group a bit higher than that, but the way the characters speak makes them sound way younger than they actually are. And that was one of my only complaints with this first book. I do think it was a very, very good book, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And so it's 7 out of 10. My next favorite was the last book, Defiant. I found the book was very good throughout, but I found the ending to be a bit underwhelming. It was still a pretty good ending, but very underwhelming, and Sanderson didn't really clean up all the loose threads of the story. But other than that, it was a pretty good book, and I'll give it 7 out of 10. And then I also read a short little book that I just saw at the library and I thought it looked interesting. What Do We Know About Bigfoot by Steve Corte. That Bigfoot has an enormous face. Look, the Bigfoot's body is so small and the face is enormous. And this is like a fairly short book. It's like only about 100 pages. But I think it's amazing how much detail and research Steve Corte put into this really short book. Before I read this book, I didn't think that Bigfoot existed at all. And after reading it, I still don't believe in Bigfoot. I think it's more likely than I thought before that Bigfoot is real because there's actually a lot of evidence collected in this book. There's that footage of Bigfoot taken from 1967, which was never proven to be fake at all. Scientists analyzed it, and there was nothing to show that it was actually like a person in a monkey suit or whatever. And that's since 1967. That's a long time for something to not be proven fake. And then there's the fact that everyone who's done really extensive and deep research into Bigfoot fully believes that Bigfoot is real. I'm not sure though. Like, there's a lot of evidence to support the fact that Bigfoot is fake, and there's also a lot of evidence to support that he's real. But all the same, this was a fascinating book. I liked how much detail Steve Corte was able to put into such a short book. But, okay, so there were 2 chapters in this book that were so absurd. It was talking about all these different Bigfoot theories, and there's this one theory that Bigfoots are actually intelligent aliens from another planet because someone like claimed to see a UFO land in a forest and a bunch of Bigfoots walk out of the ship. And then there was this other theory that was probably even more ridiculous where it said that Bigfoot lived in like a parallel dimension to ours, which is just really ridiculous. I can't believe some people actually believe that. But a really interesting book all the same, and I really liked it. I'll give it 7 out of 10 as well. The past like 5 or 6 books have been 7 out of 10. This next one, though, is a 6 out of 10. It is the second book in the Skyward series entitled Starsight. This book was for sure the weakest of them. It had an incredibly strong ending, I believe. But things were really, really slow paced, and I feel like Sanderson didn't really do a good job of introducing all these new characters. Like, we were introduced to a ton of new characters. I didn't really know much about the personalities. Like, after meeting these characters and hearing about them and talking with them for, about 100 pages, I still feel like I didn't really know that much about them. And even now when I finish the series, I still feel like I don't know a whole lot about some of the characters that were introduced in this book, with the exception of like 1 or 2. But there were a lot of new characters in this book, and I feel like I almost know nothing about them, despite the fact that this book spent so much time on them. I also feel like the plot was a lot weaker than any of the books, and for that reason, I'm giving this one 6 out of 10. And then the next book on this list really shows what an intelligent and well-read reader I am. This book really shows how intelligent I am and how many high intellectual works of literature I read. Yeah, Garfield. I haven't read a ton of Garfield. I've read a lot of Calvin and Hobbes and the Peanuts, which I think those comics are great. And Garfield is really hilarious as well. Not a very high intellectual work of literature, but I still enjoyed it a lot nonetheless. And I think the jokes are absolutely hilarious. And I really enjoyed this one. Just a fun, easy, light read that I really enjoyed. It was hilarious. And the final 3 books on this list, I was debating with myself before filming this whether or not I should actually count these books because they're not published. They're not published, and no one has read them but me, and because I'm the one who wrote them. These 3 books from yonder land. So these are 3 books, and so I've been writing diaries since 2020 by now, and so this is my diary volume 11, and then number 12, and number 13. I don't usually go back and read my diaries, but I don't know, I just looked at all the diaries lined up on my shelf, and I thought I should probably read a few of them, so I went back and read these 3. I feel like I'm not really qualified to critique them since I'm the one who wrote them, but they're not as good as any of the other books on this list. And I know people might say that these aren't technically books, but it clearly says up here, composition book. Notice the word book. I don't know, I'm just gonna say these count. It was really interesting going back on my diaries and reading through them, but they're poorly written, of course, very, very poorly written, as I'm not a published author, of course. I have to say, I feel like I'm a pretty experienced writer. I've been writing for more than half a decade now. I've been writing for like 7 or 8 years now. Haven't gotten anything published yet, though. I want to sometime. I just went back and read these for no particular reason, and they're not as good as any of the other books on this list, but again, I don't know if I should really critique them since I'm the one who wrote them. So, there you go. Those are the 20-some books that I read in December. I got really carried away, and I know I'm gonna get comments where like, how in the cat hair did you read that fast? Well, I didn't read fast, I just lost a whole lot of sleep because I was in the mood for reading all throughout December, and over Christmas break I read a lot, some might say too much, and I say not enough. But I lost a lot of sleep, and it was for a good purpose. So there, those were all the books that I read in December, a lot, and now I'm going to talk about a few books that I'm currently in the middle of. The first of which is The Holy War by John Bunyan. I actually took like a really long break from reading this book because I got caught up in all the other books I was reading. I'm on page 116, about almost halfway through, and it's a really good book so far. I'm going to do a review of it once I'm finished with it, which will... Gack, the bookmark just fell out. I saved my page though. Hopefully I'll finish this book this month, because I kind of took a really long break from it and turned to reading some other books, but I really want to get back into this book and hopefully finish it this month. And the next is The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan, Book 4 in the Wheel of Time. I'm a little over halfway through, on chapter 32, page 511. This is a pretty long book. It's 1,000 pages long, and this is a really strong Wheel of Time book. I think my favorite Wheel of Time book is still the first book, but who knows? This is apparently most people's favorite Wheel of Time book, and again, I'm only a little over halfway through, and this could become my favorite. I don't know, but so far it's really good. This is definitely better than The Dragon Reborn, which was the third book in the series, and The Great Hunt probably too, which is the second book, but I still think the first book is better. We'll see what I think once I finish it, though. And the next one is a book that I just started yesterday because I saw it at the library and it looked interesting. Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson. I'm reading a ton of Brandon Sanderson, and not a lot of his books have been my favorites. None of his books are like on my top 10 books or even top 20 books. I think a lot of his books, some of his books are really strong books. Like I like the Stormlight Archive, I liked the original Mistborn trilogy, but both those series still have problems, and I think a lot of Sanderson's books have a lot of problems. But the thing is, even though his books aren't the best, in my opinion, they're very addicting and they really suck you in. Because I keep on reading his books, I can't help myself. And I'm about a quarter of the way through this one. Where am I? Chapter 14, page 117. This book is another of Sanderson's books that does a really good job of keeping you hooked on the story, which I noticed is something that Sanderson is very skilled at doing, and so I'm enjoying it so far. Sanderson's books are definitely fun to read, most of them, but they're not the greatest, just in my opinion. This is just my opinion, that his books are not the greatest. They're certainly pretty good, and they do a good job of keeping you reading them, but they're not the best. But I keep on reading his books anyway. And the next is the final volume of the History of Middle-earth, The Peoples of Middle-earth. It almost feels crazy to think that I'm on the last book in the History of Middle-earth. I've been reading this series for over a year and a half now, which feels like a really long time, because this series is a series that you really have to take your time with. And it's so worth the journey. I'm only on, what am I on? I'm only on page 28, but it's interesting so far. Once I'm finished, I will make a full review of the History of Middle-earth series. Man, it feels like so long since I started that first book. Now I'm on the final book. The final book. It almost seems hard to believe, but I'm on the final book. And then, that's stack of books was wobbling there. That is an enormous stack of books. The next one I'm currently reading is called The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan. I'm on chapter 5, page 49. This is a series by the author of the Percy Jackson series. I'm not sure if this takes place in like the Percy Jackson universe. It might, but it might not. I'm not entirely sure. And so far, this book is pretty interesting. Nothing special so far. It's interesting. Definitely did not hook me as fast as Percy Jackson did. And overall, I think it's a pretty strong book. Again, I'm only like 50 pages in, so I'm not one to judge much. But of those 50 pages, I think they were a pretty solid 50 pages, just not near as good as the Percy Jackson books. We'll see what I think once I finish it. Look at that enormous stack of books. Here is the huge stack of books that I have right here. That is so many books. So looking back on 2025, I think it was a great reading year. I discovered a ton of books that quickly became my favorite. Percy Jackson, I think, is now in my top 10 favorite book series. And if not top 10, then for sure top 15. And I also discovered Frankenstein and Dracula, which immediately became favorites of mine. So yeah, this past year, 2025, was a very great reading year. Few books here and there that I hated. A lot of books that I was kind of okay with, and a ton of books that I really enjoyed. So that's great. I read a total of 120 books in 2025, which is pretty good. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time with a lot of those books. I discovered a lot of series that are becoming my favorites, and I discovered a ton of books that are now my favorites, such as the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis, The Wheel of Time, and many others. Yeah, 2025 was a great year, and now let's look forward to 2026. I just started a Goodreads account, which the link is up on the channel description if you want to go to Goodreads and follow me. But I just started a Goodreads account this year, and you can follow me there if you want more frequent updates on what I'm reading than you get on this channel. But I set my reading goal to 100 books. I've never set a reading goal before, so we'll see how this goes. Some books I'm planning on reading in 2026. Now, I'm very much of a mood reader. I just like to read whatever I feel like it, whenever I feel like it. You know, if there's a book that looks interesting to me, I'll pick it up. If there's a book that I don't want to read, I'll put it off for later. And I don't do like TBRs or anything like that. I just sort of go along with the flow, and I read what interests me in that moment. But there are a few books that I really, really want to read this year. I'm not sure if I'll actually read all the books that I'm planning on reading this year, but maybe I'll read a few of them. I don't know. But I'm planning on reading War and Peace and The Brothers Karamazov, two books that I've wanted to read for a while now. Both War and Peace and The Brothers Karamazov are considered the greatest novel ever written. There's some debate on it, like some say War and Peace is the greatest novel, some say Brothers Karamazov is the greatest novel, and I just really want to read these books. They are bricks. They are both like 1,000 pages long, and I've heard that they're rather difficult to get through, but well worth the journey. And I really love long books. I love going on through the journey of reading a 1,000-page book or a really long series. So I really want to dive into Leo Tolstoy and Fyodor Dostoevsky this year. I'm probably also going to read a lot more Charles Dickens, and I'm going to read a lot more Tolkien as well. Maybe I'll even finish all the Tolkien books that have ever been written. Who knows? Want to read Pride and Prejudice as well, and of course continue on reading The Wheel of Time, the Percy Jackson universe, and finish the last book in the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. I have the box set right here. So I read the first two books in the Space Trilogy, and they were brilliant. They became one of my favorite books immediately. And I got like maybe a quarter of the way through the third book, and I just put it down because it was so different than the first two books, and nothing was really happening besides, oh, these people, they're over here and they're talking, and now they go over here, and now they're talking over there with these other people. That's pretty much all that I read, and I read 130 pages of it. But I've heard that it gets way better once you get around halfway through the book, so we'll see. I really want to finish the Space Trilogy this year. Other than that, I don't really have any plans for 2026. I'll just see where my reading takes me. But yes, anyway, thank you so much for watching. A happy new year to everyone. I hope your 2025 reading year was great, and I hope 2026 goes great as well. Thank you so much for watching this video, and for now, farewell.